Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar on API economy. My name is Bharath Yaragatti. I had the pre-sales of customer engineering at Niveus Solutions. We are a premier partner of Google Cloud, recognized as the Breakthrough Partner of the Year for 2020. And we've been helping a lot of our clients in their modernization journey, in which APIs play a very important role. Right. So we all know what APIs are, and APIs have been there for a very long time. Predominantly, they were used as agents of let's say access, basically to connect two systems a while ago, right? But from that period till now, there is a whole paradigm shift in the way the APIs are looked at, right? Today, if we see anything that we do from a mobile phone, be it ordering food, be it booking a cab, or even transferring funds to your loved ones and your family, everywhere the backbone of it is run through APIs, right? So that's where I think the whole API strategy comes into picture, and that's what we are here to talk about today, right? What is meant by API economy, and what do we mean by API product mindset? What kind of business impact this has, right? And why should companies consider a API for strategy, while they're putting planning their whole strategy for the whole year, right? So along with me, I have today, Ruchika, Rattan, sales lead, business application platforms from Google India. And I also have Suhan, Shetty, who's a senior solution architect with the customer engineering team at Niveus Solutions, who have joined us to be a part of this discussion. So I extend a very warm welcome to both of you on behalf of everyone here today in this webinar. All right. So since the topic today is about API economy, right? So Ruchika, I'd like to call you in first, right? So what's your perspective about what is API economy, right? What is it all about? What aspects should organizations and businesses be looking at in order to tune into this API economy, and also how can they draw the business outcomes by being part of this product API product strategy in place?
Sure, Bharath. Hi, everyone. Very glad to be part of the panel today, and very glad to host all of you as part of the discussion. So, Bharath, to your question, the API economy, I think every customer meeting, every discussion that we get into today, this is one of the topics, key topics of discussion, I would say. So maybe let's start with the basic definition, which you will find on the internet. So the API economy basically refers to the set of business models and practices that are designed around the use of APIs in today's digital economy. What that means, let's say on a level 200, is that it basically involves the exposure of an organization's digital services and assets through APIs in a controlled way, internally, externally, whatever. But basically, it involves the exposure of an organization's digital services and assets through APIs. Expanding a little more on the API economy, and then I will go a little deeper into the second part of the question, that what are the different aspects that any business needs to think through. When you think of, let's say, tuning into API economy, the biggest question is, okay, there is API economy, there's conversation going on about it. Some companies are benefiting from it. How we as an organization can tune into that business driver or that market force which is evolving, and maybe build a new revenue stream out of it. So we will touch upon the various aspects of the thinking in a little bit, but I just want to make the context a little more objective by sharing some numbers around what the API economy is all about. So 2017 was named as an year of the API economy by Forbes, and India has seen the impact of API economy in a big way live. All of us, all of the consumers, entire India has been touched by it, be it UPI, Aadhaar, suddenly democratizing the whole space of payments, credit, KYC, So these are live examples which I would say no other country has seen at that scale. And it is all the power of APIs at the back end, which has been able to fuel that democratization. The second statistic I would want to share is that API startups, given there are a lot of startups as part of the session today here. So API startups raised around $1 billion in venture funding, according to some of the press releases in 2018. So it was a very big year when it comes to API startups, specifically, which is in the context of the topic of today. This signified, by the way, very significant increase in fiscal activity compared to, let's say, what happened in 2016 and 17, which was half of this. 2018 was again a very active year of some of the largest mergers and acquisitions in the API space, with 25 acquisitions globally, which was a 32% increase from the previous year. So in a nutshell, I'm just trying to share that this is big. The potential is big. The potential to make an impact to one's business is big. So how can a business think about it potentially, right? And I will share my perspective. I would love to, at the end of the session, hear some thoughts and perspectives from some of the people who are joining. Feel free to keep posting your comments and thoughts on the chat window as we continue to talk about our perspectives. So coming to the question, how can a business think about it potentially? So let's decode some aspects of it one by one. I will share 3 key aspects of API economy, how an organization could think about it. The first is identify what are the unique digital assets and services you have as a business. I mean, as simple as it may sound to some organizations aren't thinking on those lines yet. But I would say, I think some of the large, audiences on the call today might already be thinking about it. But I just wanted to make sure that the simple aspect is very well understood and we're on the same page talking about it. When I say unique digital assets and services, varies from one organization to the other. That is where the unique differentiators come in. But that is what helps them to build a business purely basis those digital assets and services and totally launch a new revenue stream altogether. And that is what is true tuning into API economy. Because one of the biggest use cases, I mean, let's put it out there, most of the discussions we have around API platform use cases is always the backend modernization at times. For the benefit of this audience, given most of the stuff might already be modernized from tech landscape perspective, then the use case is largely around API management, which is more of internal management and governance, scalability, security, one big aspect. So a lot of discussion is around the internal part of it. But where I'm coming from is when you truly look at tuning into an API economy, you take a lot of external aspects into consideration. You really think, how can I build a full-blown business on top of a digital product, which is nothing but an API? And that is where I said that identify what are the unique digital assets and services you have as a business. And I always give example of, for example, Google Maps. You know, this is a classic example of an API becoming such a big line of business for a company like us. Which started with a certain thought process, and as the data kept getting richer, as more and more insights came in, the whole API became a big platform and line of business for us as a company. The second example I would give is a large bank in Indonesia whose primary objective is to drive a lot of rural financial inclusion, and they have, of course, objective metrics around it. They have been able to build a $50 million revenue stream, a new $50 million revenue stream by exposing some of their unique digital assets as API products, as we call it, on their website. Of course, in the tech space, you talk about any AI-oriented APIs like Vision API, face detection API, object detection API, text analytics, speech analytics. So there's a lot of stuff already happening in the tech space from API's perspective. But from the startup space across verticals, right? There are multiple use cases that we are finding on a daily basis, credit scoring models, risk scoring models. So basically, the first aspect, coming back to the key point, is when you look at tuning into API economy for your organization, is identify what are the unique digital assets and services you have as a business, and then think further 2 aspects about it. One, what can you build out of it, which you think could be of use to the external world, and you can build a commercial model around it. And the second aspect of that is, can you look at some external partnerships to further enhance your digital assets and services that you're planning to offer as APIs to further make them richer? So as long as you think about the Uber aspect, what's the unique digital asset and service? What are different partnerships you can have to further enhance those assets? And the second is, what are the different customer segments that you want to go to be able to take this product? And then, of course, have a complete commercial model around it as I said, the API economy is about building newer business models. So it becomes a completely new business model, building a new line of revenue for you completely from a digital product. So those are the two aspects within the first point. The second point, as I said, I'll just elaborate on the target segments a little more, which is once you have the digital asset, how do you then distribute it? How do you then, of course, building a commercial model, that's a totally separate discussion, a very long topic. But once you have the product, how do you now take it to market? What's the go-to-market strategy? So there, again, I think two aspects. I literally covered very briefly on it, but I'll just go in a little bit more detail. One is we are seeing a lot of partnerships happening between different organizations. Financial services, fintech is a classic example, but even a lot of other verticals, they are tying up with startups in a similar vertical or complementing vertical at times, and then enhancing their digital products, right? So that is the first, that is the second point, which is identify potential target segments for partnerships to complement your asset or product from innovation perspective. The sub part of that is once you've done that, now your product is ready. How do you take it to the market in terms of finding the target customer segment? So there again, you could have two-pronged strategies. One is you find the customers, which is direct customers, which is, of course, apart from your physical selling or distribution strategy, you could have a digital strategy, which is an omni-channel strategy to get to the customers directly. And the second is you could even tie up with further partners, which is a more like an indirect distribution strategy, get them onboarded as your indirect partners onto your API product where they are advertised or developed or exposed, and then have an indirect customer acquisition strategy there. So that's the second part. The first is unique digital asset services, identify them. Second, identify potential target segments for partnerships to make your product or digital asset richer. And then, of course, find your distribution channels to take the entire product to the market. And the third is, third aspect of API economy is whenever you think of APIs, whenever you think of driving any kind of new business model out of your APIs, which is beyond the usual tech use cases, as I mentioned. The third thing that you got to think is always outside in, which means that you got to have your thinking on the customer, partner, employee. Those are the three audiences, by the way, which typically you serve in terms of categories. The journey is kind of laid out, which is the outside in journey, because they are the customers, they are the personas who are ultimately going to be served with the final product. So you have to lay the journeys right up front and then see where does the APIs fit in, and then literally back your business strategy with the API strategy. I think most of the times, and I'm bringing this point up because most of the times what we see is many discussions start with an internal API strategy, and at that point, the discussion is always very siloed, is what we see. The customers would prefer to just stick to the internal strategy and say, we don't have an external strategy. We don't want to discuss it right now. What happens is in the long term, it's not a very strategic move, because many times when you have to literally rewrite a lot of APIs, many times you have to reinvest, redevelop, which is not a great strategy in any way. Many times you have to junk a lot of piece that you might have built earlier with just the internal strategies from internal strategies point of view. So always think outside in, even if you are starting with just an internal plan in place, always think outside in. And then, I mean, while it's a given, I would just wrap it up to say that the tech foundation with the modern microservices based architecture, which should be given for most of the audiences on this call, but that of course comes in handy. And just in case it's a journey for any of the customers on the call, then that is where the APIs again play a very important role. So for some of you who are still not on the modern architectures and you are on the journey to modernize your backends, just in case, so then you can again leverage APIs to make sure that your front end and back end continue to kind of move at a pace that you want them to move, irrespective of the friction between the two layers. So your mobile apps, your web apps can continue to get developed at a pace of days or hours, and your backend can continue to get modernized in whatever weeks, months, years, whatever it is, while an API layer comes in the middle to kind of isolate the two, and your business continues to run with some of the next-gen initiatives all the time. So yeah, that is, I don't know, long answer to your short question.
No, but I think you have covered most of the points, Ruchika. I think clearly, right, what you have called out is something which we have been seeing that happen, right? I would like to quote a few examples, right? So during the pandemic, because the organization started thinking in this whole open or collaborative kind of a mindset, right? We were able to onboard customers. The fintechs were able to onboard customers without any kind of friction, without any kind of a visit to a branch, right? In flat 2 to 3 minutes by scanning your Aadhaar card, scanning your PAN card again, and the backend there is an API again which kind of captures all the information around it. And in the backend, because the government has exposed their APIs, right, the UIDAI APIs, the validation of the PAN, the validation of Aadhaar is done in a matter of seconds, and you have operating accounts. I think another example of collaboration, what you said is, credit card payment application, which sounds like Red, which we have been seeing, pretty much everywhere, during the IPL. They started off as a credit card payment part, right? But today, if you see it, there is a whole e-commerce business there. There's a whole UPI business there. It's a collaboration of multiple things, right? I think that aligns very well with the strategy that you were saying, where people will have to first identify what are the digital assets and services that they have, and look at monetizing that and business outcomes that can be done, right? So clearly there is a shift. So Ruchika, what do you think are the key driving factors, basically which are moving towards the shift or which are influencing the shift?
Yeah, sure. See, the thing is, what is happening today, I mean, one of the big shifts that I was at some point also leading very close to the data and AI portfolio, and I've seen that market evolving in a big way. The explosion of data is something which is very, very unique. The whole social media boom that happened a couple of years ago, applications, startup ecosystems springing up in a couple of days with so many applications, so many mobile apps, websites, the entire system kind of literally opening up, generating tons of data every second. I mean, I was just looking at some of the statistics for YouTube. More than 500 hours of video are getting uploaded to YouTube every minute, right? I mean, imagine the amount of data which is getting generated. And then on top of that, if you look at the other big market force, which is the IoT, the IoT world where, devices, people, ecosystems, equipments, applications, I mean, everybody's getting connected with a IoT sensor in every single device, right? And we as people are talking to those devices, smart TVs, smart watches. Of course, manufacturing is going through a huge wave with IoT literally getting embedded in every single area of manufacturing on the floor, on the shop floor. So there is a huge explosion of data by itself. And then, of course, the whole IoT world kind of contributing to the complexity of the data getting generated and different entities or different kinds of entities talking to each other. I think that is going to bring or amp up the whole API economy in a big way. It is already. We are seeing that. In fact, the true value of API economy, like I said in the earlier point, that the organization needs to identify some of the unique digital assets and services. When I'm saying the unique digital assets and services, it's nothing but data, build on data, basically, because there was never such an ability for organizations to collect the kind of data they can in today's world. And there was not this amount of data which could help anybody make sense of that data, because you need to have lots of data to be able to make something meaningful out of it. So I think that those two areas to me are pretty interesting market forces which are going to fuel and rather are already fueling the API economy in a big way. Of course, then you need to have the supporting platforms and the supporting feature sets to be able to enable the organization to have a strong API strategy backed by a technology platform. Platform should not be a limitation in that case. So the two market forces from purely data perspective, I already shared. The other big, I would say, big force is regulation. Lot of I would say countries outside India, we've all seen PSD2 regulation in Europe. There are a lot of conversations around open banking. There is DEPA being discussed in India from India perspective. So all of these regulations, especially in the financial services space, is already leading to a lot of different entities, being kind of brought together more on a platform to say that start sharing information with each other. So I think that's another area which is fueling the whole API growth. And thus API economy, I mean, there are tons of opportunities getting generated. It's up to us as organizations to figure out what more can we do. APIs is nothing new. They've been around for like ages, from the time of SOA and even before that, right? So what is changing now? I think the whole point that I touched upon earlier, that as these market forces are shaping the world, there is much more potential of creating totally new lines of business and revenue streams from APIs, which was never the case earlier. So, and that is where the, of course, I'm hoping that you will cover that how technology can play a key role there. So, so all of that coming together is what fuels API economy. And the last bit I would touch is the data security part of it. I think one of the other things that we are seeing in a big way, security as overall conversation is anyways big. As the world becomes more digital, the security is paramount. And I was discussing in the morning with somebody that there are some areas where whatever you do, it's never enough. Security is one of those areas. As much as you can do, there is always a scope to do more, because there's always a scope to build one more layer of defense and add one more layer of security, because the people, the cyber attackers on the other side are getting smarter each day. So security, when specifically I talk about APIs, I think there is a very big growing realization. I wouldn't say everyone is realizing it, but I think everywhere we have a conversation, security is always either a topic which takes literally the main stage, the center stage of the discussion, and sometimes it's a passing remark. But the point that I want to make is that APIs carry data. So you might end up securing your applications and databases and the larger estate, but if your APIs are not secure, you're not putting the right security frameworks on your APIs, which are carrying your data from one application to the other, or probably you're exposing some data sets outside, then there is a lot of scope for cyber attacks. So that is another area which is fueling the whole API economy, with different aspects coming together in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think data and IoT are one of the key contributing factors, which we have also seen, right? We've been helping some of our clients who are like one of the largest spare part suppliers of the country, right? And in the world of collaboration now, because of they are thinking on the API first strategy, they're able to collaborate with, let's say, dealers of these spare parts, the sellers, and then bring in the customer also, where all the connected cars are feeding back the telematics data into the system, and that is being used to, one is keep your spare parts ready in the inventory so that the customers don't have to face problems when they need it. Also predict in advance when a failure would happen, right? So that you have the inventory in stock. And on the other hand, you are giving the same feedback back to the customer from the same platform using these APIs, where they'll know how their ride was, right? What is it that they're doing? What are they accelerating more? Are they braking very harshly? So that there is a the higher shelf life for their spare parts as well, right? I think that's where all the entire collaboration is happening, which is we are already able to see what impact this has been creating in our day-to-day lives, right? So before we dive deeper into the
sorry. I think before you ask that question, right, I just wanted to extend that thought, couldn't stop myself. That is where the whole conversation about platforms is gaining popularity, Bharath, because when you talk about API economy, when you talk about creating new revenue streams, when you talk about bringing customers, suppliers, vendors, products, even, I mean, products have become an entity, when you talk about bringing all of them on a single page, a single forum, so that the feedback is real time, the data is accessed real time, everybody talks to everybody, and there is no blocker, there's no middle person who is adding to the lag in the whole process or response times, etc. That is where the whole pipeline system, which used to be there earlier, which used to be very linear. So a product is there, it's made, then you figure out the distribution channel, you open up stores, if it is a physical good, or you figure out an omni-channel digital strategy, and then there's a customer on the other side. It's no longer the case now. That is where the whole platform conversation comes together, that instead of looking at APIs as a tactical lever, we should be looking at APIs as a strategic lever, and also look at, from tech perspective, platforms to be able to fulfill that strategy, rather than, I would say, a gateway, for example, which does a much smaller subset of what a platform does, but of course does all the tactical stuff, the tech stuff, which the API gateway is supposed to do. So yeah, I just couldn't stop myself from making that point, which is the platform versus gateway, kind of enabling that whole shift.
Yeah, totally apt for the discussion that we are having. I think our audience have now got a better understanding of how the shift is happening and why a platform kind of plays an important role, right? So before I deep dive into the the aspect of the platforms, which Suhan, I'm sure I would be able to explain it to us, I want to ask you one last question on what are those key factors, right, an organization should consider while devising their whole API first strategy, right? And what kind of a role does the technology play in this whole piece?
Sure. So I think I'm also looking at the time. I'll keep my answer short because I know Suhan is also going to talk a lot about technology here. And I've made my main point of looking at a platform or when you're looking at all the aspects that we've spoken about. But the biggest pivot when you think of putting together an API strategy, I would rather pivot my answer on the thinking, which is how do you think about APIs? And that is where the shift has to happen. I think many organizations I see, they've already made that shift. Some organizations do acknowledge that we didn't look at APIs like that. But that is where I'm saying instead of looking at APIs as services, you should be looking at APIs as products. You can call it digital products, API products, whatever it is. But look at APIs as products and not services. Which in itself should be the starting point to building a strategy. And then there are 4 commandments that I would want to share, which is from the API product mindset paper, which Google released some time ago. It's on our website. So I do encourage all of our peers who are attending the call to take some time out and read that paper. Pretty insightful. I'll give a gist of it, which is the 4 commandments of that. The first is think outside in, which I touched upon briefly earlier, which means that do not do anything to do with APIs, dividing it into internal or external. Of course, when you talk about, when you go a level deeper, what do you want to do with APIs? Of course, you might want to do different things with different sets of APIs, public, private, open, but do not build a strategy in a siloed manner. Don't build that strategy in a pointed manner. Think outside in, think journeys, customer journeys, partner journeys, employee journeys, whatever is the use case of your APIs. And then tech and business need to work together to make sure that the API strategy is backing up a business strategy, internally as well as externally. The second part is speed to market, which means that whenever you think of APIs as products, you should be able to you should be thinking speed to market as the most important lever, which means that you should be in a position to deliver the products fast as the first MVP, for example, and then in a very frictionless manner, which means that you deliver the first MVP, which means that whatever platform you're using should be having the enabling feature set to do that. And just on that note, I would probably call out the third commandment as well, which is iteration, speed to market with iteration, which means you deliver fast the first MVP and then quickly iterate and deliver the second one. If sometimes things don't work out the way we envisage, then you should even have the mindset of probably rolling it back or junking it for that matter, and totally going ahead and releasing a new version of the product altogether, a new refreshed version. That is what iterative delivery means. And the fourth one is go-to-market execution, which means whatever you are building has to be backed with a strong go-to-market plan. Because when you talk about a product mindset, it is not a project with a start and an end date. It is a product with a short-term roadmap and a long-term roadmap, backed by a certain set of deliverables, which you will deliver as part of the product roadmap. So as you devise that, you should have a very strong go-to-market execution plan, which your platform should be able to enable. And one is that side of things, but on the other side, you should also be talking about bringing maybe your marketing together, maybe running some of the campaigns to get your product out in the market. So that is the fourth commandment, Bharath, which is GTM execution. So those are the 4 aspects of the API product mindset.
Or the pillars of the API product mindset, right?
Yes.
Thanks a lot for that, Ruchika. So I know Suhan's been waiting patiently. We usually talk a lot, so this link is very hard. So thanks for your patience, Suhan. So that brings us to you, to our next question, right? So we have been helping a lot of our clients in driving this entire API first strategy, right? Right from consulting them why it's important, how do they think outside in, all these aspects, how do they take products, faster to market, which is the speed to market, and the iterative delivery, right? So how do you, basically take into account these pillars while you're putting the whole, let's say, long-term solutioning or a decision aspect, right, or an approach, and during part of the implementation, how do you take care of it, and also post-implementation, how do you think long-term, right? So how are these, the pillars coming together while we are working with our clients and envision their API strategies on? Yep. Yeah, and to add to that, probably a follow-up question, right? So with a lot of these APIs and with this multiple business models, right, a platform becomes very important, right? So, managing, once you have a lot of APIs, management, the whole exposing them securely for collaboration, everything becomes a challenge, right? So what do you think are the key aspects that an organization should consider while they're choosing a platform which can drive this digital shift for them?
Yeah, I think I'm in a very tough spot right now, because you see, I'm going to talk about why an economy is required, and then I'm going to talk about how do you do it, and also I have to justify my answers, right? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to talk to you about how do we look at this application economy from a solution perspective. I've talked about you talked about what platform. So I'll open up and tell you what kind of platforms we use internally to support such a system in place, and I'll also justify with probably two stories based on the time we have about how we enabled our customers with one of these journeys, right?
Okay.
I'll take the first portion, right? Now, when people think about API, what is an API generally? API is basically, I'm a solution guy. I'll go to the basics first. So API is basically the bridge between how one application talks to other, right? The general phenomenon was these are always internal. Now, as Ruchika mentioned, now there's an explosion of data, explosion of possibilities, right? And now people like Google Map is an amazing answer. I would also want to highlight this to our audience, right? You might be thinking of API economy today, but the reality is you're already part of it. If you're using Google Maps, if you're using Zomato, Swiggy, and everything, they're all part of this API journey, right? Now, I'll dive a little deep here. Now, why do we think of it as a platform, but not like Ruchika mentioned? Why do we think of our platform, but not a gateway, right? The simple reason is because the first portion of a platform is to look at that end-to-end life cycle of an API. Each API is a product for us. I think Ruchika very clearly mentioned API is a product now, right? Now you need to start, you need to design this, nurture this, secure this, then you go to monitor, you need to, and all this end-to-end journey till you are able to monetize it, right? So if you look at that outside approach, you need to think like a consumer of how a consumer would take my value of a data, right? Now for Google Maps, it's basically how do you consume this entire map via a mobile application. Now, a person who's delivering this application or delivering stuff, right? He would use this map as an API, right? For example, as Bharath, you mentioned about speech to text. Now, anybody who's using probably the Google Meets, all of these applications are actually connecting to these backend platforms and consuming this data, right? So, as and when the need of a consumer changes, the API also needs to keep changing with them, right? So it's not like, as Ruchika mentioned, it's not like you just develop and then it's an end date. There is no end date. It keeps iteratively updating itself as a customer, as a customer asks for new things, or there's a new advancement. Probably COVID is a reason for advancement, or probably all of those, right? So basically, why do we look at a platform? Because there is a life cycle for all of these APIs. So a typical life cycle would be part of design. Then you had have development, they would have security, then you'd have publish, you'd have scale, you'd have monitor, and then finally it comes up to publish, and then it goes to monetization, right? This end-to-end journey of an API, there should be somebody who's going to do it, right? Now, we can break into each of these portions, but I will do that in the second section of my conversation of how we approach such a discussion. Now, I have a customer. Now, I'll put it into context. I have a customer who comes to me and says, you know what, I want to give my customers a connected experience, right? What is a connected experience? Irrespective of what device he goes to, he still should be able to consume the product from each of these omni-channels, right? Now, how do I do that? One aspect is I can give him one API for one channel and all of that, right? Or other way here is I can take this platform in case, write an API, have various revisions possible, and expose it over a developer console to my customer, right? Now, this is basically how we look at a platform. A platform enables us to design a API, expose this API to my customer, helps me to scale this. As in, probably when he starts with the MVP, probably there's only 10 people using it. Probably as we go, we might got 100, 1,000, 10,000. Probably when it goes global, you have talking about millions and billions of people. Right? Yeah. So this platform has to not only help me to start with an MVP and design and document and start with exposing to my internal consumer, but eventually scale it to a larger globe. And also I should be able to monetize this, right? This journey cannot be done with a gateway, right? As Ruchika very well mentioned, that gateway only talks about transformations. Like I want to convert XML to JSON, a gateway will do that. I want to do an analysis. I want to see what is the latency, a gateway might do it. But what about security? What about OAuth connections? What about LDAP connections? What if I want my APIs to be accessed only via LDAP from AD, from some certain security channels? Can I do that with an API gateway? The answer is no, right? Or can I look at exposing to a larger framework based on each IAM kind of a roles for each of these products, for each projects? The answer is no. API gateway only looks at it's a very transactional in this nature. A platform is required here to nourish this entire API journey, right? So establishing that, I'll come back to the fact what we do, what is the platform we use in this case, right? In this case, we generally use APIGEE. The reason is because why APIGEE, right? When you're looking at a platform, you expect it to support all clouds, right? You expect it to be working on premises. Basically, it should be something you can take off the cloud, on premises, right? That journey needs to be supported. The next aspect is we're looking at security, right? Very well said by Ruchika again. Security is a feature you cannot ignore, right? It keeps, irrespective of whether your application logic may or may not change, the security definitely has changed, right? So now you might be looking at OAuth from a basic perspective, but what about DDoS? What about your API abuse? What about your WAF support? What if your application gets traffic from North Korea or some other countries which you don't expect it to be traffic, right? An API gateway cannot do this, right? You need DDoS, volumetric DDoS, you need to look at WAF, you need reCAPTCHA if possible, you want all of these security put in place, right? Along with your OAuth and LDAP connection and everything. The third aspect I also want to highlight is about the developer ecosystem, right? The key reason we are looking at the API economy is because one developer wants to take the service from one of the developers and use it on his end, right? That's what API does. Now, the whole nature of outside in is to see that the business and the development goes hand in hand. And we need to give a common ecosystem, like a portal sort of a thing, where our developers or a third party or an external or internal developer can come and consume these, right? So if we don't have that platform, there is no point writing very complex APIs, doing great things, unless and until I'm able to expose it to my developers or external developers, right? So there needs to be a strong developer portal. So I'll just summarize, right? The first portion is we are looking at security, we are looking at developer portals, we are looking at looking on multi-cloud or hybrid cloud support. The last aspect is a very, very important thing is monetization, right? Today, a key difference is from a business value perspective is to be able to monetize the APIs I write, right? So when somebody, for example, if you think of Google Maps in this case, right? Anybody who consumes Google Maps is able to add huge value to his customer, right? Now, what does a Google Maps get out of it? Imagine you are one of the customers, you've written such a map or a delivery or any of these things so that people can just call your functions, ask them to do a certain job and you do it for them, right? How are you monetizing all these things? And this is where a platform adds a huge value, right? In this platform, you are expecting an app platform to, as and when people consume your APIs, they pay a certain penny, and that adds a huge value to their customer, right? There's so much collaboration between you, your integrators, and the customer itself, right? So this is very, very important. The monetization aspect for a platform is very important, right? So I've covered two things already, right? I've told you how what we spoke about earlier is really important from an API economy perspective. I talked about what is expected from these services in this first place. I'm talking about 4 differentiators, right? Because the rest of the portion, probably you're looking at transformation, you're looking at conversion, you're looking at all of these. These are what general API gateways does, right? The second portion, I'm going to come to the third portion. I'll give you a story about around this, right? One of our customers, I'll also put this out, world's greatest car manufacturing company, most renowned for making very secure cars, right? Most popular vehicles across US and India and across, even in Pakistan, the most used car is the brand we're talking about, right? Now, this company wants to give something more to their consumers. How do they do that, right? They need to build a connected cars kind of an experiences, right? What is a connected car? A single portal, a single venture where the vendor can talk, the user can talk. When I talk to users, I'm talking to the drivers, right? The business can talk. The third-party systems in terms of who's providing these vehicle manufacturers can talk. All of that, right? How can you have such a cross communication happening? Now imagine so much chaos, right? We can't manage one conversation. You told me to wait for so long. Now we are talking about billions of people talking together, right? Now you need a unified platform here. Now that is where a platform like APIGEE or a platform like an API management platform for you adds a huge value. Now, why is that? Because a lot of these APIs, let me break it down. A lot of these APIs which we were going to build were actually common for whether it was a manufacturer, a vendor, or a user, right? They were very similar, right? Now, again, think of a metrics here. Region-wise users need a different experiences. Manufacturers need a different experience. Vendors require different experience, right? Think of all the stakeholders experiencing so many expectations from the company, right? Now, the best way we were able to solve this by giving them a platform like APIGEE, which enable them to enable a developer portal, write a secure structure, which is like one single secure structure, like a shared kind of a workflow where all their APIs follow same routine, right? So this kind of enable them to Ruchika's third pillar, right? Speed to second and the third pillar, speed to market and iterations. Now they can focus on writing these APIs, and because of the portal is enabled, people can consume on their need, and so on and so forth. So with this coming in picture, so now let me summarize this whole story. A connected cars was an experience our customers were looking at, and they were looking at more than like 10 different kind of stakeholders or personas, and millions of people coming into here across country and experience. And APIGEE today is able to give them that value, right? What is the value? Faster turnaround, iteration, exposure to the developers, all of that in probably less than 5 to 6 months, right? This is a huge value, right? Otherwise, think of this, right? This would be so much chaos in this ecosystem. Another aspect I want to also highlight is India's largest insurance providers, right? Also partially publicly owned, right? Now, this company, I think you've already talked about it, right? They had to churn out insurance, they had to churn out home loans really, really fast, right? Now, the best part is they were working with us before the COVID. Now, what happened because of that is the huge benefit when the rest of the business was sulking, rest of the companies were trying to think, how do we survive this COVID? These guys had the whole plan chalked out. They had the developers exposed, they had the APIs, the east-west communication happening, all their APIs tracked with analytics. They had all the best parts, good parts of the API platform working for them, right? And I think you talked about the numbers they were able to meet, right? This is a huge number for any customer. I think, so I'm just closing my case here, right? So I'm talking about what is that from a solution perspective look at? We look at a platform is a need because we look at every API needs to have a life cycle, whether you design to securing it, to publishing it, to monitoring it, to monetizing it, this entire thing. And this happens again and again and again. Iteration. This is the fourth pillar which Ruchika mentioned, right? Second portion, what is the tool we used here? This is APIGEE, right? Why APIGEE? Number one, Gartner leader, right? It's been leader for 6 years, 8 years, the frontier in this case, right? And also he's been there for more than 10 years, right? 10 plus years, the most mature in the market. Then the last portion, I also covered about the 2 case studies. I talked about connected cars from an automobile perspective, and we talked about a BFSI customer here, right? So with this, I'll hand it over to you. I'll be happy to answer more questions.
I think I would also like to add to it, right? So APIGEE, although is a underlying agnostic platform, right? It's a multi-cloud plus a hybrid cloud or on-prem, like you called out, right? It's also very native to Google Cloud, right? So when you're provisioning, let's say cloud CDN, it could be a contact center AI or any kind of AI related what Google Cloud has to offer. You can collaborate with a click of a few clicks. The users will be able to kind of configure it and integrate them with APIGEE. It's an integrated native tool to whole Google Cloud, right? Which makes it all the more unique for all the GCP users as well, right?
Yes.
So I think that's been a fantastic discussion. I think I was just having a quick time check. So quickly to summarize, we spoke about what do we mean by API economy, right? And how 2017 say the whole the paradigm shift started happening, and what are the key market forces that are driving this? The 4 pillars, of course. Thinking outside in, taking your products faster to market, which is speed to market. How do you do the iterative delivery and basically execute a go-to-market strategy, right? So, and then of course Suhan did speak about the whole how practically it is done, how a platform should be thought about before we go out and implement this. And Ruchika clearly called out, right? A lot of you might think, okay, I'm not doing anything right now, so why should I think platform, right? I'm just building APIs and using them. That's where a lot of players lose out if they don't think big and think of having a platform which can meet their end-to-end expectations as they scale in the future. So having that strategy in place today plays a very, very key important role in your whole marketing and basically the whole strategy for success, right? So once again, thank you, Ruchika and Suhan, for your inputs. So once again, thanks for tuning in, and have a safe day. Cheers.